row seats if you are looking for spots. It's very nice to see all of you. My name is Siv. I'm leading the AI Campus Berlin, where you are currently sitting at. AI Campus, we are a community of 65 AI companies and growing in any different industry. We are initiated by Merantix, and you can see our logo here on the presentation. So we build AI companies. Anyone interested in knowing about Merantix or the campus, me, my colleague Arantxa there with the camera, will be sticking around. We're really excited to welcome today's speaker for this event. And I just want to give some brief practical information. If you're looking for the bathroom, you just have to go around the corner here, past the food robot here, and then you'll see an orange sign to the bathroom. That's also where you will find water if you want. There are some drinks already there in the back. People have started to grab them. So let's just keep it casual. You can already grab some drinks if you want. Wi-Fi password is on the tables here. I think some people were struggling with connecting to Wi-Fi. I want to give it up to Thomas Neubert, the initiator of the Transatlantic AI Exchange, and we're really excited to have him. I'll give it over to you, and then we'll kick off the event.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I will give it to Adam in a second. I just want to, before we start the session, I want to express my thanks for Merantix, the AI campus here. We had this idea when I was actually in the summertime on vacation, and I talked to Rasmus, and we talked about connecting Merantix Berlin, the hotspot here, with the ecosystem for startups with Silicon Valley. And that's what I'm passionate about. I will tell you a little bit more in a second. Before I do that, I would like to hand it over to my partner in crime for this event, Adam. Adam, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Thomas. Thanks everyone for coming. So hello to everyone listening across Germany and the world right now. You're very welcome. Very quickly, my name is Adam from Startup Network Europe. Yes, please, thank you. I'm Adam from Startup Network Europe, and we do events in Germany like the Germany Startup Conference 2021, which we did last year. In the times of COVID, I think we had 1,500 people, which was amazing. And 2 weeks ago, we did the Berlin Product Conference. And then today, the Germany Startup Conference 2022. So we have a lot of people here. It's a full house. I'm very, very happy with that. We also do events across Europe. For example, the UK Startup Conference, the Dutch Startup Conference, the Irish Startup Conference, lots of conferences. And in December, I will travel to Ukraine. We're going to do the first ever European Startup Conference. So the idea of that event is to connect hundreds of Ukrainian startups with hundreds of international investors. And we also make communities. So this is where I want to talk to everyone in the audience. We have a partnership with TikTok, TikTok for Business. And the idea of this event is partially to go back. We're nearly there. Okay. Startup Network Germany. So we have a WhatsApp group in Ireland. It's called Startup Founders Ireland, and it's incredible. It's 500 people. They're all founders. They're all exchanging good information with each other. So our idea is to also do something like this for Berlin, for Munich, for Hamburg, for cities across Germany. Because if you have 500 people in a group, I know it's WhatsApp, but if you have 500 people in a group, they help each other if they're founders. If you have no salespeople, they're just there to help each other. Really, thanks to TikTok for doing that. So I think, Thomas, that's the end of my slides. If you go one more. Yeah, and now it's your turn, and good luck with the event. I'm going to go downstairs, but we can have some drinks and networking later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. But what Adam missed was that last week, we actually, Adam and I, had a physical event, a physical only event in London. And we had the room set up for like 180 people, and 220 people showed up, and 150, they met us across the street for networking, like 300 plus people until like midnight. And 60% roughly were startups plus investors and things like that. So as I'm getting older, these kind of things until midnight, you know, when you turn 50 and above, then you see it a little bit differently. So anyway, so my name is Thomas Neubert. Maybe a quick introduction about myself, and then also a quick introduction about the Transatlantic AI Exchange. So personally, I am German, born and raised in Germany in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. And I studied computer science, moved to Munich, got a job offer for 1 year, moved to Silicon Valley. I got a job offer for 1 year to be in Silicon Valley to go back to Germany. Make a long story short, that happened, but I never came back, and I have been in Silicon Valley for 31 years. So I've been there a long time. Always very closely connected to the German ecosystem. I love working with startups. I have been in this industry for around 35 years. Almost half of, actually more than half of it, I built startup companies from PowerPoint, from the idea all the way to IPO. I love the spirit that entrepreneurs have. And 2 years ago, I was approached by the consulate in San Francisco to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, what it is, and the definition of it. So having spent half of my life in the startup world, I spent the other half, not willingly, but it just so happened, in the corporate world. So I was at one time the VP General Manager North America for the Deutsche Telekom to build an innovation office for startups in the Valley. And for the last 6 years, I am with Intel, the small company that everybody, I guess, knows by name. Within that, I am in an incubation program at a business innovation office dealing with startups and new innovation. So I started with something like virtual reality technology, a little bit augmented reality, and then robotics, facial authentication. But for the last 3 years, I did everything around artificial intelligence, either on the edge, we call it the IoTG group, the Internet of Things group. Currently, I'm in the data center group on the back end. And then in between, I was also working with our teams for the artificial intelligence tools that we have called One API and OpenVINO for inferencing and training. So with that, I started 2 years ago. I have to say, I call it a hobby, the Transatlantic AI Exchange. My wife thinks differently, but you can have different opinions. But I'm super passionate about it. And when I was here in the summertime, we talked about an event, a physical event, and this is my very first hybrid event. So I'm a little bit nervous. I hope everything works out with the video and with audio. But it's the first hybrid event. And the reason why I did this is Adam convinced me that from last year, COVID to now, things seems to change. People love to go back to meet face to face. People love, we are human beings, we like to connect with people. And we gave it a try. Last week was physical only, and this is our first hybrid. There will be another one by any chance if somebody is in Munich on Thursday. There will be another event. It's an hour and a half. There will be 15 speakers. We actually have the US Consulate General coming physically to Intel Ignite office, the WeWork office in downtown Munich. We have the Staatsminister für Wirtschaft and Art from Bavaria coming, presenting something very unique. And then we have a bunch of speakers, 15 speakers, a different setup, but it's a very informative. So with that, let's get to the program. Let me look at my notes for a second, if I may. So thank you very much for being here. It's nice to have a full house. Again, thanks again for Sif and Rasmus, who isn't here, is traveling right now. Arantxa and Yvonne and Paul on my end, who actually put this whole thing together. Everything that you see here. So what is Transatlantic AI Exchange? It's very simple. It's an open platform that I created around 20 months ago. And I would like to have anybody around, particularly AI, but also startup in general, to have a platform where if you have a cool topic that is worth sharing with others, to contact us and we will help you to put a program together about certain topics. It could be about models, it could be about how to get into the market, how to connect with VCs, how to do fundraising, whatever it may be. And the reason why I did that is I am really, really honestly excited to see after 25, 30 years that in Germany, and I'm not kidding, in Germany, the energy within the startup community is amazing these days. I have not seen that in the internet bubble days as much as I have seen it right now. And that is a huge compliment for what is happening in Germany. It may be, I don't think it's cultural, but it's probably generational driven. There's a little bit more infrastructure in place. The opportunities are huge in front of us. And I like to believe that AI or künstliche Intelligenz is something that will enable more opportunities going forward than in 97 when we didn't even know what the internet was going to be. And we know what it is today. I believe something bigger will be happening with AI over the next 10 years. And you guys, I guess, are here because you want to be part of it. And we, or myself and the rest of the team, we are trying to connect the experts from Silicon Valley and beyond, but primarily Silicon Valley, the corporate, the research institution, the universities, the startups, the venture capital people, and communicate to the rest what we have learned, what we have done. And I have to admit, and I want to say this very honestly, it's an eye-level conversation. It's not like the Silicon Valley people tell the rest of the world how it functions. I don't think that's the way it works. We in Silicon Valley need to learn what is happening in Europe. I don't believe somebody from over there blindly can enter the European market without being aware of regulations and desires and trends and things like that. At the same time, the world is global. So even venture capital people looking into Europe, they're looking into the Israeli market for startup investments. They're looking into Germany. They're looking into London last week, which was amazing. So I think there's a lot of exchanges possible. And that's what this platform is all about. So if you have any cool ideas, if you want to get networked to some people like the experts, all the speakers are listed on our website. If anybody ever wants information or something, ping me on LinkedIn. Look on our website, they're all listed. By the way, every session that we have done so far, I think we did 16 or something, they're all videotaped and they will be all available for free on our website. Just go on the events and then under each event, you can watch anything that ever happened before. So that's who we are. With that, for now, I would like to give you just a quick, before I go into the speakers, I want to give you a little bit of an overview. So first of all, again, actually we had 14 events over the last 18 months. With that, we have around 150 plus people per session. There was one session in March where literally we had over 1,100 people in the session from over 84 countries. It blew my mind away. And the format was different. And it's the same format that we are replicating this Friday in Munich. Rather than having 2, 3, 4 speakers and go deep, this one is almost like, call it speed dating. 15 people, 4 minutes each, little tiny snippets. People seem to like it. So we are doing it again. And we will do it again next year. We have some partners that we have relationships with who are helping. We are helping each other, and there are some, level of people that you can see as speakers that we have over the last 18 months. Professor Wallster, the founder, the original founder of the BFKI here in Germany. My friend Mark, who is the former president CFO of Salesforce, the VP of Finance at Dell, and he was with Autodesk and Logitech. So really experienced people who are willing to share their knowledge with everybody. This may be of interest for some of you. Who is a startup entrepreneur founder in the room? Whoa, great. You should check out this slide. So we came up with the idea for a prize. And the price is that by January, we are going to look at our database and we are looking at who has participated in our sessions, either a video session or here in person. And who is, this is a requirement, pay attention, who is liking and following us on LinkedIn. So it's only 2 little clicks, takes you 5 seconds or less. If you do that, we will put you in the selection process in January. And we are going to pick 3 startup companies and we will put money towards the ticket and we will invite the winner, whoever it may be, to Silicon Valley. Whoever it may be, we will spend a day or 2 in coaching them, I will personally show them around in Silicon Valley, and we will have some introductions with maybe some VCs, some incubators. We definitely go to Intel's the headquarters. I'm obviously with Intel, and there will be other companies that will be willing to participate in the program. So if you have an interest to come to Silicon Valley, be my guest, do what I just said, and then you may win $1,000 or $500 if it's, second place. And 4 hours free mentoring, third one. So similar to Adam, Adam is obviously full-time in the conferencing business, and he's based in Dublin. I'm in Silicon Valley, and I have a paying job. So this is a hobby. Having said that, these are the events that are upcoming. We just did put London away. So we have Berlin today. Tomorrow there is a networking event, beer only, not beer, drinks only, no speaking, no nothing, just pure networking, because we had way too many people signing up online that we are inviting them tomorrow for this event. Adam put it on the website, it's somewhere in a bar or a beer garden or something like that. And then we have the event in Munich on Thursday, and then we already have two events virtually only at this point, where we are going to talk about machine learning and models. That one I am very excited about because it's a professor from Berkeley who recently did something like this for a handful of executives at a very well-known German car manufacturer who manufactures super fast cars, okay? And he had a really good presentation about models and how to apply models, how to define the problem, go backwards, and then walk anybody who hasn't done this or doesn't know what this is about the process itself. There will be another one about Web 3.0. There will be another one about the metaverse. And then there's another one that we just come up with this. We don't have the date yet, but I would love to do something about women in AI, because that one, all the women seems to be going after me. Because the balance between the man and the woman is not equal. Although today is the first time. So let's get to the speakers. We have 2 speakers online, and one actually had to cancel the trip for good business reason. So let me start with the people who are actually physically here. Ladies first, may I introduce Vanessa Khan? Thank you very much. You're welcome. I guess you are a well-known person in this campus because you're here quite a bit, I would assume, being based in Berlin. There's a mic, yeah.
I actually don't know so many of you, so it's great that you're all here.
Great. So you will have in a second a few moments to introduce yourself. The second person is Till Amelbrook. Thank you very much for joining us. If you don't mind, you can share the mic, and then in a second, Till can introduce himself. He's from the German entrepreneurship here in Germany, based in Berlin. And then we have Lydia. And Lydia Dervisheva was actually planned to be here in person, but now she's actually, I think you're back home, right, Lydia?
I'm flying to Silicon Valley tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay. And you are now where?
In Sofia, Bulgaria.
Oh, okay. So this is truly international. So thank you very much for making the effort from Bulgaria during a business trip to join us. Appreciate that very much. And then last but not least, we have Lutz Finger. Lutz, we saw you a few seconds ago, and I think he's back. Here we go. Hi, Lutz. You are calling from where?
I arrived yesterday here from Silicon Valley. So I am at the moment, I live in Silicon Valley, but at the moment I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, okay. I'm not judging that. Good. Thanks, Lutz, for joining. So with that, maybe we start with the introduction, and then we go a little bit. I have something else to share, but before that, let's have the introduction. Who wants to start?
Yeah, sure, I can start. Yes, my name is Till. I'm also, our office is actually over there down the hall, so from German Entrepreneurship. And German Entrepreneurship is, we are a partner for startups, for corporates, for public institutions, and for innovation. So basically, we were most well known for German Accelerator. So German Accelerator is the German startup accelerator that is backed by the German government, the Bundesministerium für Wirtschaft und Klimaschutz, so the Ministry for Economy here in Germany. And it's really all about internationalization. So we help the startups to internationalize in other countries. So our biggest program is obviously the US, but we have many programs in Asia already since 2016, 17, I think. And so India, South Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia. So there's so many emerging countries, emerging economies there that startups that are here in Germany that are offering very deep tech technology, other technologies that can go into these markets. And me personally, I'm program director of the China program. So I have been in touch with China or working with China for more than 15 years now. I studied there, I worked there. I have been working for other accelerators that are doing the same thing, like helping startups to enter China. And that's what I'm doing at the German Accelerator now. So we help startups to come on the program and then learn about China, learn about how they can enter the Chinese market in a safe way, and and really advise them of what challenges there are there in China, but also a tremendous amount of opportunity that they're obviously in one of the biggest markets in the world. So that's so much from my side.
Thank you very much. And let me just also add as a reminder, it may sound a little bit silly because he literally is based, or their office down the hall of this particular floor. But I just want to remind you, as I'm looking in the camera right now, there are many, many people remotely dialing into this session from all over the world. So this is just not us here in this room talking to each other. There are many people watching us. So this is a truly international event. Vanessa, please.
Yeah, cool. So hi to everyone out there too. My name is Vanessa Kahn. I'm the managing director of the German AI Association. We're a network of 400 companies that all focus on the field of artificial intelligence. So not only startups, companies in general, but we check with every company that 70% of their activity is in the field of big data AI. So we are a very closed community that helps startups or helps companies in general exchange with each other, because we do see that some are just more of the front runners, and everyone can benefit from the exchange. That's why many of the companies in Germany have already joined us. There are around 600 AI companies in Germany, just to give you a number. We're very much looking at Europe as a market also for AI companies. We connected with partner associations all across Europe. So more than 10 associations now joined how we call it, European AI Forum. So it's our network of European AI associations that kind of join forces to give European AI companies a voice in Brussels, but in Europe in general, and engage with each other. On the one hand, we help companies not only to exchange, but also to give them a voice politically. So we're talking a lot with policymakers across Europe, especially in Germany and in Brussels right now. You might have heard of the AI Act already. That's something that can really have a tremendous impact on AI companies in Europe. So we're trying to check that the AI Act is fostering innovation and not prohibiting that innovation becomes possible. So policy is one big thing for us. The other thing is also connecting companies to investors and connecting them with established companies. Most of the AI companies in Germany are B2B focused. So they're, of course, very interested in helping established companies through the digital transformation. And that's what we have a lot here in Germany. I bet we're going to look into that in a second. And that's, of course, where we as a network can also help.
So the word networking comes up a lot, right? And there's a saying, it's not what you know, it's whom you know. And I think there's a lot of, you should know what to first, I should rephrase that. You should know your things, your stuff, but networking and building a network with people within the industry is always extremely helpful. And as you can see on this panel, we have a variety of business people, investors, organizations and things like that. So it's a nice balance mixture. With that, I would like to give over to Lydia, please.
Hi, can you hear me well?
Very well. Loud and clear.
Can you get? Yeah,
Yes,
perfect.
we can hear you.
Hi, I'm Lydia from Next 47. I will talk briefly about the fund and I'll give you my background as well. So we're a $2 billion fund. We're based in Palo Alto. We're focused on B2B investment. So usually we invest in Series A, B, and C across the B2B space. For us, that means anything from enterprise tech, infrastructure, vertical software, areas like logistics, supply chain, manufacturing, construction tech, and prop tech, basically any industry which is digitizing and adopting new software. Infrastructure for us means not just cyber and cloud, but also AI infrastructure, MLOps, DevOps. Also we do deep tech as well. So I've done deals in areas like autonomous driving, 3D printing, mobility, you name it, kind of across the space of deep tech and enterprise. The fund itself is fully funded by Siemens. So Siemens is our only LP, but it's kind of a new breed of corporate venture capital. In that sense, the money is given to us. We manage it on a fully financial basis. So we look for the best returns. We don't look for any strategic value. We look for companies that are category leaders that are starting to scale up, and that's where we can support them and provide the most value. The way we do that is by not just helping day to day and working with founders, which is a lot of how I spend my time, but also we have a go-to-market team, which is currently over 20 people. They're based in across the US, also in London, Munich, Berlin, Paris. And we sell on behalf of every startup that we invest in. So we actually contribute revenue, we make introductions, help the startups get those deals to closing. We just got our second fund committed. So fund one was $1 billion that we got started in 2017. And then we're now starting to invest out of fund two, which is also $1 billion. And I'm a partner on the team, have been with Next 47 for about 3 years now, and 5 years as a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. My background is originally I'm from Bulgaria, which is where I'm today. But normally I live in Silicon Valley, based in San Francisco. I source deals across North America primarily, but I also have roots in Europe. So I'm often in Berlin several times a year. I've been to the AI campus many times. I've known Rasmus for over a decade, which is how I got introduced to this network, and really happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Lydia. I hope you can hear us well, right?
What is it?
Can you hear us? Can you hear us well?
Yeah, I can hear. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Lutz, you are next. Please go ahead if you can hear us.
I can absolutely hear us and happy to go next. Hello, good morning, good evening, wherever you guys are. Like, hello to Berlin, town where I was born a while back, and I see a lot of participants here on the stream. So hello to everybody out there. I'm Lutz Finger, very simple to remember. It is like the finger. I'm the president of product and technology for MorePay Health. Health company. I'm the guy who uses AI at the moment quite a lot to make healthcare better. We are matchmaking. We're trying to predict what we call avoidable hospitalizations, like not only in the US, but all around the globe. People are actually in hospitals and they shouldn't be in hospital. And in layman's term, it's very simple, right? Like if you have diabetes, you can manage it. You can even reverse diabetes too, and you don't need to end up in a hospital. If you end up in a hospital, something went wrong. If you get a hip replacement, that's very painful, expensive, and annoying to everybody involved. Something might have gone wrong in terms of if we would have identified it earlier and did the right prevention methods, you might be better off. So if you look at the healthcare hospital today, roughly 1/3 to 1/2 of the people shouldn't be there if the healthcare system wouldn't have let them down. So that's what we do. We do predictions. We help with matchmaking. We improve our members' lives. So and for that we use AI. I'm I studied quantum physics in Berlin a long time ago. But I have been doing essentially AI, machine learning, deep learning quite a lot. I had my own company. I worked for LinkedIn. I worked for Snapchat, brought Snapchat, like helped Snapchat go in public with data. I did some work for the Deutsche Bank, actually, a fun side fact here. And then I built up the population health team at Google, and recently joined Marpay Health. I'm an angel investor as well. I have currently active, I think it's 6 startups, and I think 4 of them are actually in Berlin. I'm trying to keep a very close relationship with Europe, and wherever I can help in terms of giving advice in terms of how to use AI, how to make products usable. I'm doing this next to my job at Marpay. I'm actually faculty at Cornell, where I'm teaching about that. I'm teaching about what's hip at the moment in the field of AI. I'm teaching about how to use, like having a prediction in itself is not a product. Having a prediction in itself doesn't mean it makes money. And we have seen many failures where people are totally excited about technology and it didn't work. So I'm teaching a lot about not only what is the hippest AI in town, but as well, like how do you actually build this into a product? What's a useful application of AI, as well as what is an ethical application of AI. So that's my course. You find me at Forbes, where I'm talking quite publicly about those things, either with my students or by myself. And yes, that's me. Back to you.
Thank you, Lutz. I have to say, one of the best parts of my job, or not job, this hobby project is the kind of people that you meet. And I was just listening to him, and I didn't know Lutz, 2 months ago or something. The same with Lydia. And you meet all these people, and we had lunch today, first time ever. And you talk to the people, and you just never know who you run into. I mean, listen to what Lutz just said, right? I'm doing this, and Snapchat, and LinkedIn, and Google, and Investor. Who would have known? But just showing you the little finger that his last name is Finger, right? So networking is very important, and I want to encourage you after this, reach out to all of us, including the speakers, I assume via LinkedIn or whatever you are on, and then just build the relationships, and hopefully something sooner or later will come out of it. So, having said that, let's talk a little bit about the industry itself and what is going on in Silicon Valley. As you can see, 3 people here out of the 5 are living in Silicon Valley. 2 of them are actually German, so we have been there also quite a bit. And I think the one thing that I want to point out is this myth about Silicon Valley. I just want to clear that up once and for all. A lot of people coming over there, and they always say, what's the difference and what it is. And we believe in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is not a place. I mean, yes, it is a place on the map, but it's really not a place. It's a mindset. And I think it's the mindset that we would like to inject in the European and German culture. And it's getting there, but it takes quite a while. And there are some dynamics, if you look at it, that will play and has played to the advantage of the mindset of Silicon Valley. And it's from the history, by nature, besides the weather is quite nice there. People who go there, they are by default, I almost like to say, and I don't want to generalize, they are risk takers in general, or like I call myself not a gambler, a calculated risk taker, an entrepreneurial startup risk taker. That's number 1. Number 2 is the combination of the university ecosystem over there in a short driving distance, right? There's Berkeley, there's San Jose, there's Santa Clara University, and then there's the all-known Palo Alto Stanford University. Right next to it, who has been there, they know this, if not, it's literally physically next to it, there's the famous Page Mill Road and Sand Hill Road. And every big shot VC is on this particular road. And then you have in roughly 15 minutes driving distance. And I'm just giving you a few examples, 15 minutes driving, right? So even from here to, the end of Berlin, you have NVIDIA, you have Intel, you have AMD, you have Facebook, you have Google, you have LinkedIn, you have Microsoft, and so on and so on. And it's the combination of this package that makes Silicon Valley so unique and the mindset in itself. And we talked about this over lunch. This mindset, the culture is something that we as a speaker and we as business people like to actually bring across, and hopefully something will stick over time. So the first question I would like to ask the podium, and I actually like to start with Lydia, which I assume you can hear me.
Yeah.
Because everybody's always interested in talking to VCs. You can have whatever panel you have if a VC, so they get all the attention. So Lydia, you have all the attention. Or maybe let's do as an angel investor. The first one is over the next 9 to 12 months, considering we are going to have some very rough times economically speaking, okay? What do you believe is your interest in regards to the investment thesis? Is it more focused on later stage? Is it more helping them to get a longer run rate? Is it more early stage because now is the time? Are the valuations still sky high as they were 6 months ago? And within AI, what are the use cases, the topics, the technologies that you particularly are interested? And then I open it to anybody else, even if they're not an investor.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Thomas. I think we're entering a very kind of strange time in the world of investing and in the markets. If you ask anyone in the US, do we have a recession right now? I would say most people would agree. And you know, some people would say it's not yet, but it basically, if you look at all the metrics, you look at the public markets, you look at valuations, we're definitely headed for, I would say, a down cycle of some sort, whether it would be a 6-month cycle, a 2-year cycle, it's really hard to tell. But my belief is we haven't really reached the bottom. So in the US, it's a little bit more apparent. We see kind of a very quick change in the sentiment of investors, also because we saw like a lot of public companies drop valuations by 60, 70, sometimes as much as 80 to 90%, which you can imagine for a public company, it is a big deal. It's why we're seeing a lot of layoffs. We're seeing a lot of hiring freezes. Almost every tech company has some kind of hiring freeze or layoff already. And it's kind of last couple of months were quite strange. So we were, you know, waiting for deals, kind of looking at the market, and it was very quiet. It was a strange summer where I would say the supply and demand for deals, it wasn't really meeting because the market had come down and valuation, like public market valuations, the multiples at which companies were trading had changed, and public and people just in the hype of the market, just in, you know, November, December of 2021, were able to raise at crazy, like exuberant valuations, which were almost, and everyone was saying this is irrational, like how is this even possible? We saw companies raising at 80 to 100 times their revenue. And everyone said this has to end. And now we're seeing that, yes, we're seeing the correction. We're seeing that now people are becoming more level-headed. We're seeing some rationality in the market, but a lot of founders haven't yet, you know, taken to heart that this is an actual, like a true down cycle, and it's not a blip or the V-shaped recovery that we saw in March of 2020, and a month later, everything was more or less back to normal. We're seeing a lot, kind of a much bigger kind of a shift where it will take a while until valuations go back. For anyone investing in the later stages, everyone's looking at the public markets and indexing, you know, if public market companies are trading at, let's say, 8-9 times their revenue, it's hard to value somebody at 30-40 times revenue because that company will go public, you know, in no more than like 2-3 years, or even in 1 year, and it will be valued like its peers that are public now. And so we're seeing basically less appetite for Series C and later, a lot of appetite for seed, pre-seed. Series A is still very attractive. Series B is kind of where it gets a little bit trickier as in a lot, like the valuations have come down a little bit more than in the other stages, than in earlier stages. I'm mostly looking at Series A's lately. And those are usually companies that, you know, are just starting to hit product market fit. They're just starting to scale, like not fully growth stage, but So let's say they closed on a few customers, have a product that's launched, something that's gone beyond like POCs and beyond like initial trials with the customers. But I would say if you're a founder, it's you're facing kind of a challenging next 12 months for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Lutz, maybe with you coming from the corporate world, but also having, your interest level as an individual angel investor. And you recently mentioned something, and I hope I can openly say that you said something about you just finished or you're in the middle of finishing an M&A. So from a corporate world, how do you see the interest level in looking into startup companies as an opportunity, either as an investor or as an acquirer?
Got it. Let's start. Hey, thanks. Let's start with a simple fact. So I'm at a Nasdaq listed company. So if you look at our share price, you know what I think about the market. Share price is down. That's down to the discussion on recession, despite the fact that healthcare is actually normally one of the areas where we don't see those effects so strongly. So what I see is that there is still, if you look at the venture part and the capital part, everybody is bracing themselves at the moment on the startup side for lower returns and for focus on creating value, which is a very, like, looking from it from an AI point of view, it's a very interesting mix. For the folks who digged into AI history, and I will do a very quick excursus here, we had 2 AI winters. AI, artificial intelligence, is not something which is totally hip and so 2022. It's not. What everybody raves about it currently, it was developed in 2014 roughly. So that's what we see. And AI itself started in 1956, 57. So it's that old. And in between, we had different hype phases. We had different excitements, and we had 2 so-called AI winters where all the funding dried out and everybody says, nah, it's not going to work anyhow. Now, we know by now that it works, but the combination of having contracting markets and having people being way more cautious with the evaluations, as well as the counterpart of this huge hype on missing out on AI movements, is actually a very strange market dynamics, which I would say. On the other hand, I see in Silicon Valley, there is a lot of money still around. It's not that, so all the funds still have money. They don't know what to do with it. They get paid for spending it. So there is another counter effort at the for it. But I think it's good for startups to be very much focused on how do you really make money and not how do you drum up the hype cycle, because the hype cycle is about to end.
Thank you. Thank you, Lutz. Is there somebody playing with a computer over there? No? Okay. So you have you said earlier you have a very international Asia focused mindset as well. Anything you can add in regards to adding what they just said and with a different mindset from the German entrepreneurship point of view? Because you also deal very closely with Singapore.
Yeah, I can maybe talk about it from the internationalization point of view, because we are talking to startups and we want to obviously get them onto our programs to internationalize. And they often say, oh, we have to focus on investment, have to focus on the issues in the home market, and we can only do that later. But maybe the logic there should be actually also the other way around, or it might be that in the coming or near future, that might also turn around, that we have a recession maybe in Germany in home markets, and there's even more pressure to internationalize, and that programs like us, other internationalization programs, might benefit from that. And that's something what I see, because when investors are invested into startups, so one key benefit they get from our program is also credibility in front of their investors, because investors want to see the German startups internationalizing to different markets, to US, obviously, to Asia as well. And if they've gone through a program like German Accelerator, for example, it gives them a credibility in front of their investors to move forward, because the startups needs to scale, and the German market is not as big. It's not as much of a pressure, maybe like for startups in Tel Aviv. They really do not have a market in front of their doorsteps. Same like in Singapore, they have really high internationalization pressure. But in Germany, it's also an internationalization pressure, and I think that's very good, and I think that's very important for the German startups. So that might also be a workaround for a potential recession or economic challenges that are happening in Germany soon. Yeah.
Maybe just check the temperature in this room. There were a lot of people who are founders in startups. Who at the moment is already with their product ready to explore another market outside Germany and outside Europe? So first of all, out of Germany within Europe. Okay, and what about the US as a potential market to get in there right now? Okay, so it's quite a bit. Okay, Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. I'm not sure, are you dealing with VCs with investment opportunities? Do you have an opinion? Please share. If not, I have another interesting question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to share, because what you're actually talking about, I always find it very interesting to see the dynamics in the US versus the dynamics in Europe, because what you're saying right now, you have to have a product ready, you have to have the numbers behind it. It's something that I think a lot of German startups are facing on everyday basis. So I think that the VC landscape in Europe is actually very much is very much a number game, looking at business plans, looking that you already have clients. It's not only a POC at the beginning, and so it's kind of going much more into, okay, you have to have product market fit at a very early stage, much more than it is, I think, in the US, where you can build castles in the clouds for a very long time. So I think this can actually, from another view, be also a chance for the European market, because lots of our startups are already there, they're already at an early stage working with clients. They're focused very much on fields like manufacturing, working closely with the clients in Germany. So I think it can really be a chance also, just to give another side.
Okay. A few takeaways from the combined feedback here is, yes, there is a recession coming, or at least some tough times. But what I also take away from this conversation, and it's similar to what I heard last week from 3 other European VCs in London, is that the current status of the time changes actually is an advantage to the early stage companies who are taking an advantage of the situation right now. So the bad times are the good times, depending on that side where you're sitting. The other question is, again, looking at the camera now with the other people who are on this call, which is also the US side, and I want to flip the coin for a second. The things have changed in regards to Europe trying to also control its own destiny, particularly in AI. We talked about the Brussels thing and all of that. What advice do you combined have for companies, either from the US, also from anywhere around the world, in the AI space, who are preparing themselves to enter the European market? What are the minimum requirements that they should look out for? And what are the things that are really serious that if they don't address a few regulations or rules, that they pretty much will be blocked to enter this market? Any advice for the people online?
Well, what I do realize is, and I'm like at the beginning, I also worked for a lot of international or US tech firms that actually, from a public affairs side, they wanted to go abroad, they wanted to come to Germany. And what I've realized is that when you talk to people from Amazon, from Google, they have this mindset of the customer, the user kind of decides if they want to buy our product or not. In Europe, it's much more, you have to look around regulation and keep regulation in mind, be it like GDPR, so all the data regulation that we have here, but also, especially in the field of AI, it's a lot about trust also, and when you want to work with European industry here. So you have to take in mind like transparency of your systems. You have to take a bias is a big question, like all the ethical side of the aspects of products, I think is a major point if you play in the industrial space in Germany, and these questions will come. So I think if you want to go abroad, if you want to kind of come to the European Union, you have to discuss these before you actually come here, because they will come even, if it's just with your customers.
Okay. A similar question maybe over to Lydia. When you deal with your startup companies, and you have seen, obviously, you see both sides, the European side as well as the local, the Palo Alto, the Silicon Valley side. What advice, what guidance do you give your startups from over there who wanted to enter the European market? But at the same time, if you have investments over here, what advice do you give them how to actually smartly enter the US market? And then the same question from a healthcare perspective, who's also dealing both ways.
Yeah, we work with, as you said, on both sides, helping US companies enter the European markets, and we do the reverse too. We have about, from our 45 investments, about 10 are in Europe and 5 in Israel and the rest in North America. And so it's something we constantly think about every day. The first thing, and that's irrelevant where the company is based, is I would say obsess with the customer and make sure really it doesn't matter do you have AI or not, because lately, if you look at any startup, everyone says they have AI or some predictive capabilities or some more sophisticated data capabilities, or they're cloud first, API first. It doesn't really matter how kind of deep your AI expertise is. Of course, it's better if you have if AI is a moat and you actually have a moat around how you get your data, and we can talk separately on that. But separately, what I want to emphasize is make sure whatever you're doing, whatever product or service you're developing, you're solving a true customer pain. And as long as you figure that out and understand, like, how is this customer pain different in another country? Is it different in the US? Is it different in Germany versus Spain versus in the UK? If you're able to really understand like how to operate in those geographies, it's very common for startups to first hire, let's say, a salesperson in the new geography and kind of try to test out the market, start a few POCs. I would advise against going with channel partners. So like, let's say a channel partner decides to take you to a new geography. It's usually more challenging, and that's where you kind of lose perspective of, actually truly understanding what the pain point is, because you have someone else trying to sell on your behalf. So it's, of course, regulations matter when you do this kind of jump, transatlantic jump. But what is more important is understanding, like, how do you grow in a new geography? How do you acquire? Is the go-to-market strategy different? Because every market is very particular. There's more regulated industries like healthcare that you have to understand the local regulations. In B2B or in enterprise, it's usually, as long as you have your data compliance, your GDPR, SOC 2 compliance in the US is very common. So as long as you kind of tick the box on the required kind of compliance, and like IT teams at, let's say, larger companies or mid-market who approve your product, it's really more about, it gets to the question of, is your product really necessary? The competitive landscape might be different. So that's always something to think about. Like, always do your research and make sure you're not entering kind of a market that's already kind of a red ocean with many, many competitors, and look for markets where your solution is very unique and maybe there's less people trying to do the same.
Thank you. Lutz, any thoughts?
Very hard to follow Lydia here, because she actually gave a very, very good overview of the different directions somebody needs to think about it. But essentially, the two main differences are competition is a click away. One of the mantras you see here, meaning like if you have a solution which is easy, adoptable, just go and sell, right? I mean, that's the best market feedback you can get. And the other direction is, Lydia mentioned this quite nicely, is regulation. Fun story. I like at one point in time, I met a German startup founder, and he showed me an ads platform for media ads, and I was like scratching my head. I was like, I don't know, but I think those things exist already quite a lot. Why do you think you can succeed? And he was a gentleman in this case. He smiled and said, well, it's regulation. Regulation is protecting us. So Europeans often point towards regulation, that their market is so complicated, and therefore they have an edge there. Or other companies who come from not less regulated market would say, well, it's just harder to make business. The margins are less. However, it turns around if you look, for example, as something regulated as finance. I'm one of the early investors of in a bank in fully digitalized bank in the US, as well as healthcare, right? So as soon as regulation kicks in, there are barriers to overcome, which eat into the market of existing, it eats into the margin of existing players, and might be a niche. However, might be a niche is a very dull sentence to say for an inspiring startup founder who's aiming to change the world, essentially, and say like, okay, change the world, but I start first with a niche in order to avoid regulation. Just my 5 cents.
Thank you. I'm looking at the clock, and I want to be respectful with everybody's time. I think we were scheduled for an hour. I think we have 10 more questions. I had 7 more slides that I'm not even pulling up because we are running out of time. But
and there's very good discussion online, actually, in the chat group, which I think and myself, we have a blast watching this. You guys can't, but there's good.
Well, we see something here. I don't know what we see here exactly, but there's something going on. But I actually forgot the online chat. So let's do the following. First of all, yes, we are running out of time. Sorry for that. But just keep in mind, the takeaway is feel free to reach out to any of us via LinkedIn and have questions and comments. Feel free. It's number one. That's an encouragement. Number two, keep an eye on the transatlantic upcoming events. They most likely will be all around AI from different angles, and hopefully you can take something away from that. If you have an idea, if you believe there's a specific topic that needs to be addressed with 4 or 5 specific speakers, send us a note. We will put it together. Maybe we come even back physically and have another hybrid event. We will figure it out. Before we do that, I would like to open up maybe a few minutes of Q&A, including the online questions, and I have no idea which ones they are. Okay, so you see them? You see them? Okay.
2 microphones, that's Andy.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. How does somebody go about fundraising? They have no idea this person, and they'd love to know the first steps.
Okay, who wants to take that? Very quickly, very precise, very short. Did you hear the question, Lydia Lutz?
Sure, I can give you the perspective from Silicon Valley. So maybe somebody can add more in the DACH ecosystem. In Silicon Valley, like if I think about where I get the leads that I'm most excited about, it's first of all, through founders I've already invested in, because it's people I've trusted, I've deployed capital, especially if, let's say, I know that they're in an industry like plugged into that vertical. Let's say it's a supply chain founder, and every time they recommend to me another supply chain startup, I'll be all over excited about that. So that's one. 2 is through investors who are my peers. So for example, people who are investing just a stage earlier than me, who I really respect. And those are really good introductions, especially if those investors have already backed you, and not looking for people who are, just passing deals through, and like they heard about a deal and they pass it along. It's not as valuable as somebody who actually put money in you. So like your angels, your seed investor, your pre-seed, So it's really important in the beginning of your journey as a founder to get advisors, to get other founders to invest in you, to get people like operators in your industry to invest in you, to get seed VCs, syndicates. So those are all folks, think about it as folks with various networks that you can tap into. And those can be helpful across the full journey of the startup. Like no matter if you're raising your A, your B, or you're going public, it's invaluable kind of a peer group of people and people that you create around you, a community of helpers. So I would advise you to start with that. And if you can raise from some of the well-known seed VCs, I look, for example, because I do A and later, I look at where did the best seed VCs invest, and it's a pretty straightforward analysis. Okay, they're already backed by these like top 10 funds. Like, of course, that should be knowing that these top 10 funds probably see all the top quartile deals. That's the startups I wanna back usually. But there's also bootstrapped startups. There's all kinds of funding journeys. So VCs are usually quite open to startups that maybe only raised from angels or only raised from high net worth individuals or family offices. So there's no one right path. It's figuring out kind of what works for your startup, for your capital needs, how fast you want to grow. And I hope you all are able to raise your rounds without too many challenges in the next couple months or whenever the time is.
I think
Maybe to add to that just quickly, because it's not just about the fundraising, and I think we said it earlier. It's about creating value, execute in a lean and mean way, and try to solve a problem, a real problem, and articulate it very clearly. Because if you don't have these basics, it doesn't matter whom you talk to, because nobody will give you the money. So you need to keep that in mind. And the other thing is an interesting takeaway from last week in London with some of the VCs, when we talked about the upcoming recession and stuff. Don't hit the panic button. Stay your course, assuming you know exactly where you would like to be. Don't shift far left, far right, because you think that things will change. If you believe you have something that is really right on the money, and you believe there is a problem to be solved, sit it out, focus, and execute. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, we have some questions from the audience. So front row, I'll go with you.
Right, Jose Quesada from the Science Retreat. I'm happy to hear that early stage is not as affected by the VC crunch. That's good news. I have a question about B2B startups that are selling to big customers, right? In Europe, in my experience, it's very slow to close a deal with a big company, right? It took me 2.5 years to close Volkswagen. At this point, I don't think I can go another round with another big customer, right? Even if you have a big success story. Do you have any advice for this type of situation? Because I see that Europe is more B2B. There's more opportunities for B2B here. B2C, I mean, customers, it's kind of a valley thing, right? And it's also a lot more risk. The European thing could be going B2B, but with only early stage funding and 2.5 years to close a deal, it's tough to pull it off, right?
Lutz, can I pick on you? Otherwise, I can answer.
So I think the observation is correct that B2C is riskier. However, I wouldn't only say Europe is only B2B. Also, we saw very good startups which are B2C starting in Europe, right? This is not an US thing. This would be weird. I think what you see is that B2C very often needs higher funding upfront, because you have not only to convince one or two big companies or customers, you have to convince thousands and millions. And that comes down to like, do you want to push the panic button? And I'm totally with Thomas. No, don't push the panic button. You are in the startup world for a reason. You go out there because you believe you can make an impact. And how do you raise funds? You go and tell people how to make an impact. I I was the other day at the AI campus in Berlin, actually. Thanks, Rasmus, for hosting me. And last weekend, I was having a coffee in University Avenue, close by Stanford. And one person walked up to me and said, like, I'm in the middle of fundraising. You're Lutz Finger, right? I saw you in the AI campus in Berlin. I would like to pitch you my product. And they pitched me the product. I'm very tempted to invest, by the way, but this is the whole idea here is to, and it's a consumer product. The whole idea is build a consumer product, and then if you want to build one, and go out and convince people. Don't be shy about it. For B2B, it is similar, but the risk level is different. It's not lower, it's different. Like this time you have to build up the connections. My own startup a long time ago, we sold to NGOs and governments. That's cool. Once you have them, you only lose them by death, I would say. So it's cool, like once you establish the system. But like I sold to the OECD, it took me 2 years to sell to the OECD of effort. Now that's a huge cost block to actually do. So B2B has the problem that you need to establish those sales routes. You do it very similar to fundraising. You go and convince people that this is the right thing and that they should trust you. Because what Lydia just said is, in other words, are you a trustworthy person? There are many people running around and saying, I have an idea. But the question is, can you execute on this idea? Is this idea real, or are you just BSing your way around?
I think it's a very important reminder that it's a combination of multiple things. And we hear this, I hope loud and clear. It's networking and building trusted relationships, not fake ones, trusted relationships. And then it's about referrals. I'm sitting here because somebody who I know for 30 years introduced me a year ago to Rasmus. Rasmus introduced me to you, and to you, and to you, and to you, and it's building from there. If somebody now comes to me that I trust, and it happened a week ago, somebody from Aachen, who is in the middle of fundraising. So I looked at the plan and I gave it to people that I trust because it's a reference. And as Lydia said, right, she is looking for her peers for references. She's looking for founders who have a good track record, who have done it before, and so on and so on. So that is like a golden rule for me that I always followed, that you build trusted relationship and you just try to get the most out of it in a positive way. In regards to B2B and corporations, I could talk for an hour as an example about just like Intel, and there will be other big companies, right? The programs that we have that you should be looking into. So one is, I just put up this slide. There is this program, Intel Ignite. It's the review of a batch of startup companies that they're reviewing. Mirantix does, or AI Campus does the same. They're all over the place. This one, the only difference here is, or this one is different because it doesn't require an investment of Intel capital. It is completely disconnected. You can come from any source. You could come from here to attend this batch program in 6 months. And what you gain is, and there are some statistics here, is that you have access to hundreds and hundreds of VP level and deep engineering level Intel crackheads who really know their stuff. And you get white glove treatments for 6 months or 4 months or something with no strings attached. It's free. Now, why does a big company do that? It's because we want to get closer to the startup community and we need to know what is happening there, because we may not be as close as we have been 20, 30 years ago. And the other one is there's always an opportunity if there is something that is really valuable to our own product roadmap, which you, for example, B2B or technology, you don't know what it is. I can tell you 15 minutes how many business units we have and products and hundreds of that. This relationship is an example for you to get attention, to get the foot in the door, the business unit and the product people, they will be aware of you, and then you go from there. On the side is Intel Capital, who will have a look at it. Is this of interest? Maybe the next time you need money, they will look into it, and so on and so on and so on. That's your program is excellent. Last week, you had this big batch in Silicon Valley, right? First time in 2 years or something, it was in the HANA House, the SAP HANA House in Palo Alto, sold out. Everybody gave the pitches. They're all Germans, right? They came over there. They probably built a phenomenal network last week to get in front of the Palo Alto network and visibility towards either investors. And if I would have been there, or some friend of mine from Facebook or from Google, you get the foot in the door and you can raise the interest. One more comment on your question with B2B. If I would be in this building and I'm building a startup and I'm B2B and I need to rely on the corporate, I have to admit, you need to be very clear. It is super complex and it takes a very long time to cut a deal with a big corporation, because that engine is like a Titanic. It's going its course. And then maybe they look at you, but they will ask you 1 billion questions for 16 months. That's the planning process. And you may run out of money. It is still of value for everybody who needs to go sooner or later into a big corporation. But what you should do at the beginning, you should always identify the lowest hanging fruit, the smaller opportunities, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Not only they give you the traction, they give you special treatment. They're probably more flexible to adjust with whatever your requirements are. And with these tractions, you can actually attract more VCs rather than waiting for an Intel or Microsoft or Facebook to talk to you and sign an MOU in 2 years from now. So you need to be very clever about the timing of these various things. That's what I would do as a salesperson.
Can I add one quick comment? Because one thing I also realized with some of our members, and it's switch it off, and it's quite contradictory actually, is play with the budget. Because often it's really interesting. If you're like 50,000, your product costs 50,000, you always play with like the unit of AI or unit data, and it will take ages. But if you say it costs 500,000 instead, they're like, oh, that's not part of my budget. You have to talk to the CFO, then you go to lunch with him, and it's much easier. So it's really interesting. Some of our startups were really successful with just raising their budgets with a zero at the end.
Yeah, and it's all good on the Zoom side. One more, please.
Yeah, sorry. Hello, my name is Günther Tau from the company TBS here in Berlin. We are a network of senior advisors in AI. I have more a fundamental question, because someone of you was mentioning the black box with machine learning. The companies, they're always asking for transparency, and how you will deliver with machine learning or deep learning the transparency. That's the biggest problem you have, and you cannot. So far, we have checked it all over, the regions. There is not yet one solution for it. Nothing. So just the question goes to Lutz as well as to Thomas.
Maybe I take it first and then Lutz. Explainable AI is a big deal. And I think experience over the last years, recent years, have shown that even bigger corporations, they cannot play in maintaining the black box. If they could, they probably would. But I think what is happening is regulations are now more and more surfacing up that this thing needs to be more regulated. But the other thing is there are real examples that have happened to consumers, like the Apple incident with credit card scoring, for example. And that has raised the visibility in the market. And I tell you, big corporations, everybody, explainable AI and open the Pandora box to make it visible, particularly to the consumers, is a topic that, as far as I know, everybody's working on it right now. It may take a while, but I think it will not take much longer that explainable AI in general is the de facto standard, because it has to be. And it's pushed by regulations and by you guys, by all of us as a consumers. Because if I have a choice between something that is explained to me and I know what I'm signing up for and how I'm being rated versus somebody who's holding back, guess who wins?
Okay, I think we're good then. We've got a bit over.
Lutz,
Lutz, of course, sorry.
Go ahead.
No worries. Very good question. But the if I paraphrase the question, you're saying essentially explainable AI would be awesome, but there is no technology, we don't actually have it, right? And I think that's a fair statement. What we see is we see that humans are biased, and now we train computer on biased humans, right? We see the data sets are scarce, sometimes wrong, and we train computer on that. And that has all kinds of unintended negative side effects. And especially in Europe, people are very quick pointing those out. The question which we need to ask as society is how to deal with them, right? And regulation starts kicking in and saying, guys, we need to protect the consumer, we need to protect the minorities, and this is all the right things. We should not expect explainable AI to reign on us and solve all our problems. Because the problem starts actually with how we humans behave, right? Let's not forget this, that very often what we see as bias is ingrained into our society. And then we have a new norm emerging, but the data is still the old one. So explainable AI can, at best, help us to point out those differences. And there are ample of research done, and I'm talking now from my Cornell hat on when I look at the research done around bias and how you deal with it. Like there's this, like, take the very simple question of using machine learning to calculate the likelihoods that somebody pays back a loan, right? And then, okay, if somebody like male versus female, that's a factor. Okay, well, take female out. Well, then actually the length of how somebody worked, because now you suddenly have the baby break maybe in between, which is a factor. So there are so many different factors which you can make visible through AI, and then as society have a discussion around it and want to discuss it. Let's not assume that AI will help us, explainable or not, to become a better society. That's still our job. However, yes, there is a shortcoming in the current setup.
So maybe with that, 1 to 5 words wisdom from each speaker to the audience, the international audience and the local one. And let me start, because this is something that I didn't set up, so you're not prepared. So my one is follow your passion. Simple as that. Follow your passion.
We need another. Okay. What's that? Yeah, follow your passion is definitely the right one. I think what we also have to look at when we look at the ecosystem here in Europe, and I think I'm trying to translate that a lot into established industry, is look at what the return on investment is on a ecosystem perspective. So I think the SMEs really have to understand what is their return on investment if they invest into your product, and that's how we have to cope into a, how did you call it at the beginning, an ecosystem that maybe doesn't have the silicon mindset yet, but has a lot of strengths, and let's use them. But I think for that, SMEs have to understand what do they get when they invest into your product.
Yeah, for my side would be stay open-minded. I think that's very important. So you have to stay open towards criticism, towards other opinions, towards other markets, cultures, all the way along the road. And it's so easy to get focused on something when you become successful, and stay open-minded and make sure you're always progressing.
Lydia.
I would say create your personal board of directors, which means create a network of advisors, a network of people who've done it before, people who you respect, people who can make introductions for you, people who you can also contribute to and make them more successful. They have interest in making you more successful. So it really matters. We're a community of people, whether it's in Berlin, in Germany, in Silicon Valley. The world is very global now, and kind of having that community that's kind of will take you to your next phase, both in personal life and your professional life. It still matters to be connected to really awesome people. So always use the opportunity to find more mentors and learn from them as much as you can.
Yes, like 3 to 5 words. That's very tough, Thomas. I actually had a similar challenge at one point in time as I was writing my book. Actually, I got like essentially the same question from my book editor. Okay, you need now to come up with a title with 3 to 5 words. The title of the book is essentially the same advice I would still give today because it works for AI models, it works for personal advice, and it works for businesses. It's called Ask, Measure, Learn. Ask the right question, or like ask for the passion, or ask the right thing for you to like think about what you want to do. Once you do it, measure. I'm not a diabetic, but I want to take care of my food. So I actually measure, like for fun fact, my glucose level constantly, right? Or like people count steps on personal life. So measure what you do. And if you're a company, obviously you want to measure what your success is. If you're a startup, you want to measure how happy your customers are. Are you really creating the value? And then the last one is learn. Ask, measure, learn. Actually, you're doing this because you're trying to improve. We want to be better people. We want to be a better society. We want to get up for something and improve what we do. And that is the learn part. So my 3 words would be ask, measure, learn.
I like that. Thank you very much. So as we are finally closing this session for the people who are calling in remote, they can close the Zoom. And we are opening up the beer bottles because I think we are all thirsty. So thanks for the host. Thanks for my partner in crime, Adam. And thank you very much for all the speakers.
Tschüss nach Berlin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And